Let's bring in Chris Stigall.
He is Chris Stigall.
Chris Stigall.
I'm joined now by Chris Stigall,
host of the Chris Stigall Show.
So let's bring in talk radio host Chris Stigall.
Also, his podcast is a must-listen every day. Chris Stigall Show podcast.
And host of the Chris Stigall Show.
Let's bring in Chris Stigall.
Please welcome Chris Stigall.
The Chris Stigall podcast is presented by usmedicalplan.com. Save big money monthly and get better health coverage at usmedicalplan.com.
Hey there, thanks a lot for downloading the Chris Stigall Show podcast. I know there are many, many podcasts you could choose from, so that you choose us is not a small thing. Thank you. Thanks for the 5-star reviews. Thanks, as always, for your written reviews at Spotify and Apple Podcasts. And I want to tell you about my friend in Cincinnati named John Ruhlman. Now, he runs a company called U.S. Medical Plan. And John has been a sponsor of mine and a friend of mine for a long while. And he has gotten calls from this audience, including calls from my own family, calls from colleagues and friends of mine who have shopped with him their current health insurance plan. And he has saved friends and family thousands of dollars, literally. Let me give you a for example. I have a friend who bought private health insurance for his family. His daughter had some special health needs that cost him quite a bit of money a month to get premiums covered for all of them. John found him identical coverage and saved him $2,000 a month. That's jaw-dropping money. My parents called John for a supplemental health insurance plan for their Medicare. John saved them $400 a month. Now, every nickel is precious, particularly when you're sitting on an income that you've got to count on for the rest of your days and you're counting your change. $400 is a lot of money. All right, so that's what John can do for you. Or maybe if you have no health insurance at all and you think it's too expensive, I can't afford it right now. He has over 100 different private health insurance companies all over the country that he shops and compares so that he gets you the best rates and never cheats you on coverage, by the way. It doesn't mean it's some scant coverage. Great rates, great coverage. Let John and his team at usmedicalplan.com go to work for you today. You can also call 877-410-4321. 877-410-4321, usmedicalplan.com. Glad to be with you. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome in on this Monday edition of the Stigall Show. Thrilled to have you along as we look in on Dallas, Texas today, where there are some heavy hearts in Texas, all across the great state of Texas and all across the country, as we look at what was just an unthinkable disaster, but one that, quite frankly, I was stunned to learn actually had happened previously back in 1987. This is something that is not totally unfamiliar to people there, but it's 40 years ago that something very, very similar in that same area did in fact happen. I was actually watching some old footage of that from the late 80s, and we are prayerfully thinking about these 80-some souls that we know have lost, another 40 they're still trying to find at this hour. A good number of them are children, unthinkably staying at a Christian camp down there near Kerrville, Texas, and it is... It's impossible to put into words. It's, I think all of us imagine our children and our families and ourselves in situations like that, and kind of the sudden nature of it, the overnight nature of it, the speed of it. This thing going up the equivalent, this river, the Guadalupe River, of something like 2 stories inside of an hour. The thing rose. It's an unthinkable amount of water and an extraordinary amount of time, and the search continues this morning. This from the Wall Street Journal. As those swept away by the punishing flash floods in central Texas over the holiday has taken 82 souls. Nearly a dozen girls alone from a private summer camp are still missing at this hour. Rescuers combing the swollen banks of the Guadalupe River, holding out hope survivors might still be found. They have, I did see, one tiny shred of a silver lining in it is that they did find, I believe, one girl clinging to life in a tree. Anyone who was able to get high enough to cling to life in a tree, remarkable if able to do so. National Weather Service said heavy rain and slow-moving thunderstorms throughout the weekend and continuing, I guess, into last night could create more flash flooding in what's known as Texas Hill Country, including hard-hit Kerrville, Texas. It is... President Trump was asked about it over the weekend, 2802. He says he will probably make his way down there soon. I know as of yesterday, while I was in worship, our pastor brought up the fact that the governor of Texas, as well as President Trump, asked yesterday to be a national day of prayer for those folks in Texas. We certainly prayed for them. We continue to pray for them today. They're going to need our prayers for a very, very long time. And here's President Trump talking about his plans to visit there.
I wouldn't blame Biden for it either. I would just say this is a 100-year catastrophe, and it's just so horrible to watch.
Are you planning to visit Texas, Mr. President?
Probably on Friday. We wanted to leave a little time. I would have done it today, but we'd just be in their way. Probably Friday.
Yeah, and predictably, the left is taking any opportunity to politicize this as though it's something President Trump could have stopped. If but not for cuts made to the National Weather Service or some such thing. Here is the proud American who moved to Ireland, Rosie O'Donnell, 2785, opining.
And what a horror story in Texas. The flash floods in Texas, the Guadalupe River, 51 missing, 51 dead, more missing. Children at a camp. And you know, when the president guts all of the early warning systems and the weathering forecast abilities of the government, these are the results that we're going to start to see on a daily basis, because he's put this country in so much danger by his horrible, horrible decisions and this ridiculously immoral bill that he just signed into law. As Republicans cheered, people will die as a result, and they've started already. Shame on him. Shame on every GOP sycophant who's listening and following the disastrous decisions of this mentally incapacitated POTUS.
I can't imagine being so mentally disturbed that your immediate reaction to the deaths of children is to politicize it. It's hard to understand, and it's hardly worth the energy. I don't like giving people like this a lot of my energy and time because it's not sincere. It comes from a really dark and insincere place where the losses for them are so incalculable politically. The inability to connect with the American people is so great. They don't know what else to do but try to turn what should be a human moment into something for political advantage because nothing else has worked. So I guess in one sense, if you want to try to make sense of it or understand it, when you're a Democrat and nothing you have to offer the American people is connecting, and they have rejected you out of hand, and you can't win elected office, and the president continues a victorious march, policy after policy after policy, and he can't be stopped no matter your theatrics out in front of the Capitol building, no matter your stupid floor speeches and filibusters, no matter your screeching, no matter your talk show hosts and celebrities screaming and yelling, the American people aren't buying what you're selling. So I can imagine when you're that desperate, your heart gets dark and hardened, and when dead children present an opportunity, you figure, well, maybe this is a way. Most human beings share a fundamental pain in the death of children, I think. I mean, and even the left, not really that, with infanticide, but that's a side story. And the mutilation of children with the butchery called transgender surgery. But setting all that aside for a minute, I think most people, when you hear about children tragically dying, most people's hearts break. And so the American left thinks, well, I guess this is an inroad. Maybe if we can somehow convince the brokenhearted over the dead children in Texas that somehow Trump was to blame for that, maybe we can start to break that impenetrable bond that President Trump seems to have with the American people and his policies. Maybe we can make the case that these children wouldn't have died if Donald Trump hadn't begun to cut government. And isn't it ironic, actually, that I'll spend maybe a little more time on this later in the show. Here we have Elon Musk, who's joined forces with President Trump to help him get elected. Elon is mad at Trump because he's not cutting government enough, fast enough. And wackos like Rosie O'Donnell are suggesting that children died because Trump made any cuts at all. And isn't that Well, that's politics in 2025. But anyway, reading some other comments from the left over the weekend on X. Texas, what you going to do? There's no FEMA to pick you up by your bootstrap. They gave it all to ICE. Texas deserves every flood. God has spoken, and it hates Texas. It, lowercase g. Again, as if these people believed in God. I'm kind of happy the National Weather Service gave incorrect prediction. These are legitimate posts on X, incidentally, all with handles affixed. I'm happy the National Weather Service gave incorrect predictions when it came to how much rain would fall, especially since the best and brightest from that organization were let go due to Doge, Elon, and Trump. Texas deserves the flooding. I wonder, does Elon, as he's out there kind of screeching about a third party, does he realize he's also being blamed for dead children? I mean, now does not strike me as the time that we would begin to splinter and war with one another because these people are uniquely odious. And they blame you, Elon. You can go after Trump, and you can go after Republicans, and you can say we're not reducing the government fast enough for your taste, but you do understand that right now, not only are you hated, and you're never going to win back the good graces of the people who hate your guts for supporting Trump to begin with, they now believe that any tragedy that befalls anyone ever that's related to weather, or when FEMA has to respond, they will use your Doge department and your work with Donald Trump and getting him elected as the reason people died. So I'm not sure what the new strategic campaign plan is for Elon Musk exactly, but I hope he understands that when it comes to people like these, they think you've murdered children because you want to rein in taxpayer money being blown across the federal government. The people of Texas, reading from another, Ron Filipowski, one of the more prominent left-wing posters on X, said the people in Texas voted for government services controlled by Donald Trump and Greg Abbott. This is exactly what they're getting. Another wrote, good, I'm glad. Did it take Rogan with it? I can only hope. Wishing Joe Rogan dead. Texas deserves it. It's God's, lowercase g. It's God's will, of course. That's what God would have wanted, right, Republicans? Ha, ha, ha. My empathy for these redneck reject states is zero. So F them. I hope more to come. Let's start the hurricanes. Here was Greg Abbott's chance to look intelligent, writes another. Instead, he starts by invoking God. God may not exist. I love the caveat. God may not exist. Why hedge your bets there, tough guy? And if he does, he sent the flooding, and if there's any place that deserves this, it's hellhole Texas. It's not awful, it's what Texas deserves, right? Another. Cry harder, Texas deserves it. So that's the compassionate American left's response to a tragedy. Back in a minute. The opportunity for leftists to make the point that God, almost to mock, and that is what it is mocking the idea that as a believer that you believe in a creator. Mocking your faith is one of the opportune times. People love to take tragedies like these in Texas on the left, people who are godless and atheists. This is their opportunity to try to convince believers that there is no God, or that if there is, that he's out for vengeance and you somehow deserve it anyway, and that they're somehow on the side of God, which of course is a contradictory position unto itself. How can one be on the side of God if they think that this is God taking out his wrath on Republicans for supporting government spending cuts? So are you acknowledging then that you believe in God? And that somehow you think God is rendering a just verdict? No. No, you're just taking the opportunity to spit on people who vote differently than you do. You don't believe in God. Of course you don't. And the irony is these people think that more government is what would have saved any lives. They think that government is what saves lives. I write about this today at the Harum Society, actually, about socialism, frighteningly close to taking root. I mean, full-blown, like elected office, senior office in New York socialism could be on the way there. And how contradictory it is, of course, to Christian values, how contradictory it is to any of us who are believers. The greatness, the natural rights that we just celebrated on the 4th of July, they're gifts from God. The left doesn't believe that. That's kind of the thing about their amusing protests over the weekend that they weren't feeling patriotic and they weren't going to acknowledge the 4th of July. They weren't going to acknowledge Independence Day because that ogre Trump. Of course, all the while missing the irony that the very freedom that they have to take to the public square or go on social media or wherever it is they chose to spit on the flag and spit on the country and say they're not going to celebrate Independence Day and all of this. Little do they recognize or realize the irony in all of that is, of course, that's a natural right that exists to them because of God. Now, if Donald Trump were truly just the dictatorial ogre they believe him to be, there would be no right for them to protest publicly in the street or online. We'd be Iran. We'd be North Korea. Total state control, everything. There would be no getting on social media. You would gather in the street, and you would wave your flag, and you would salute, and you would celebrate. And if you were caught doing anything else, you'd wind up in a gulag. That doesn't happen here. You know, Mike Johnson said this well on the floor heading into the weekend as the big, beautiful bill was on its way to passing. 2775, if you would, Paulie. I thought he said it very, very well. Here's Speaker Johnson.
The powerful thing about that is we're the first nation in the history of the world that acknowledged that our rights do not derive from government. They come from God himself. You see those words up there, that motto, it says, "In God we trust," right above the Speaker's rostrum. You know, a previous Congress put that there in the early 60s in the height of the Cold War. There's a little visitor's guide that people get when you do tours late at night. You've probably seen your constituents and visitors and friends get the guide. If you turn, I think it's about to page 21. It explains why that's there. And it says, Congress voted to put that there as a rebuke to the Soviets' worldview at the height of the Cold War. Why? Because communism, socialism, find their root in Marxism. And Marxism begins with the belief that there is no God. It's wrong. And this Congress made us stand those many years ago, and we should do it again. We're different. Okay. We're distinct. We're exceptional.
We are different. We are distinct. We are exceptional. We will always be. This is the Stigall Show. Well, this is going to take some time today as well, out of the news cycle. It should be Big Beautiful Bill Day. It should be just sort of a revisiting a Big Beautiful Bill from Friday. But, of course, number one, the tragedy in Texas, which deserves the attention that it's receiving. But then, politically, you head back to Washington, D.C. Benjamin Netanyahu is visiting President Trump today. That's number one. Number two, you have Elon Musk taking shots now at the Republican Party and pledging that he's going to primary them or what have you, which I've written a little about at the Harum Society. I might have to revisit again. President Trump has addressed this on Truth Social as well. I will say he is more reserved. He's not going both barrels on Elon quite like he could. Elon is pledging. It's interesting. Scott Adams wrote some things about what he thinks Elon's up to, and I might share that here a little later. But then there's this that also came rolling out over the last day or so, and this is not going to help matters. It's going to be terribly distracting. I would love it if we could have actually started the week discussing the Big Beautiful Bill, but I don't think that's where we're going to end up heading. You know where we're going to end up heading, don't you, Fast Eddie?
I think
everybody on our side is going to start talking about soon?
Well, unfortunately, late yesterday, a video was released about the Epstein files, the actual Jeffrey Epstein video. So, Chris, I have an idea as to where we're going this week.
I don't know. I always have to couch this. I don't think the Epstein situation is unimportant. I just don't think it's the most important. I've never thought the Epstein list is the most important thing. I've never been consumed with it as the most important fire burning here at home. And yet, I don't know that there are many in this audience that don't share my point of view, but I know that there are a lot of people, quote, on our side or in our tent who are almost singularly fixated with this. And anytime the word Epstein is almost Pavlovian. It's like dog on steak. They just Epstein? They can't wait to talk about it. It's like chemtrails and what else? Seed oil. There's just certain stuff that gets people animated, and this is one of them, Ed. And forgive me, your host is not a guy who gets again, talking about the totality of all that's going on in the world, I'm not a guy that gets completely wound up about this. Having said all that, the Attorney General, Pam Bondi, has come forward to say, in so many words, that client list that so many of you have been wanting to see, that you're convinced exists, she now says it doesn't exist. There is no such thing. And look, this is going to be a very, very tough hill to climb for her and for President Trump. And really for anybody that's intellectually honest, because that's not what was said not too terribly long ago. I mean, we've only been talking about a Trump presidency since January, so we're entering the 7th month. And it wasn't too terribly long ago that we had the big release of the files and the big promise of lots of stuff on her desk and time. It was going to take time. And I've been telling you, people have been writing this show and calling this show and saying, when are we going to start seeing heads roll? When are we going to see people sent to jail? When are we going to address? And I said, all I can say to you is the wheels of justice grind slowly, and I'm just going to give the benefit of the doubt to Pam Bondi, who Trump has continued to call a bright, shining star, and that she's fantastic. Trump has never wavered in his support and his admiration, his public proclamation of support for Pam Bondi. He's never stepped away from that for a minute. You know, my default position has always been, I trust Trump. That continues to be my position. It hasn't changed. I trust Trump. Now, President Trump has not publicly commented on this that I see. I don't know that he will. Attorney General Pam Bondi, reading this from Newsweek, facing scrutiny after a memo from the Department of Justice said there was no evidence that Jeffrey Epstein kept a client list or that he was murdered. So this is two-part. Number one, the suicide/murder, many people believe murdered. They have released videotape now where they say, look, there is no gap in the tape on this time from when he went in there and was locked away to when he was found dead. No one entered. There is no interruption in the tape, they claim, and as such, he killed himself. Bongino has now famously come out. Bongino, who was one of the biggest critics until he became the deputy director of the FBI, came forward with Kash Patel and gave that interview that, you know, a lot of people said they looked a little uncomfortable with their eyes darting around. If you're one of those body language experts, I will concede that it was probably not the finest performance by Kash and Dan, because they did look a little on edge about it. And for people that are inclined to believe that this guy did not just up and kill himself, it was not the most convincing thing. They say, look, you don't have to believe me if you don't want to, but I'm just telling you, I've seen all the evidence. I've seen the videotape. I'm not one for conspiracy, folks. I'm not looking for it. Believe me, I don't go seeking it. It is a religion for many people to just wake every day and look for conspiracy and everything. I'm not interested in it. I've always said that I believe the problems that face this country in broad daylight are plenty without having to go create new ones for ourselves. I also believe that God's in control ultimately, and you and I can spend a bunch of time obsessing over things that we can't see and can't control. If you'd like, I choose not to give that kind of energy to it. You're welcome to if you want to. The memo, first reported by Axios, said investigators found no incriminating client list and no credible evidence Epstein blackmailed prominent individuals. This is the thing that President Trump is going to have to address, Caroline Leavitt's going to have to address, and I'm having a very difficult time understanding. Maybe someday we'll have a DOJ person on the show, maybe. I'm not going to hold my breath. I understand that they're not really willing and readily available to talk about this, except for in kind of broad press conferences like Pam Bondi has. But remember, Pam Bondi, not too terribly long ago, gave a press conference where she did in fact say she had a ton of stuff sitting on her desk that she had to go through. Did she not, Fast Eddie? I mean, did she not, standing there in front of the White House, say, hey, look, there's a lot of stuff we got to go through. I've got all this stuff sitting on my desk I got to go through. Give me some time. Only to come out and say over the weekend, it's nothing. There's nothing there.
And then she promised to deliver more. So she delivered that first packet to the influencers, and they're running around holding it up high and, you know, acting almost as if it's a joke. And then she says there's more. Oh, I've got tons of files on my desk, and now here we are. Like, yeah, and honestly, Chris, you and I predicted this. We predicted this back then, so credit to the show.
In February, Bondi said that an alleged client list, naturally she was on Fox News, that an alleged client list was sitting on her desk and would soon be released. The Justice Department then distributed binders marked declassified to far-right influencers at the White House, writes Newsweek. Quickly became clear that much of the information had long been in the public domain. The debacle angered conservatives, failed to tamp down conspiracy theories. Later, Bondi said she had been made aware of the existence of thousands of pages of previously undisclosed documents, adding that she ordered the FBI to provide full and complete Epstein files, including any videos. She said in May that the FBI was reviewing tens of thousands of videos of Epstein with children or child porn. Bondi's comments and the delay in releasing the next batch of documents tapped into the suspicions that damaging details about Epstein or other prominent figures remain hidden. The AP reported on July 1st that it had spoken with lawyers and law enforcement officials in the criminal cases of Epstein and his former girlfriend, Ghislaine Maxwell, who was convicted on sex trafficking charges after helping Epstein abuse underage girls. You know, I did hear someone make an interesting point about Maxwell in particular. How do you have a trial surrounding Ghislaine Maxwell, who helped traffic young girls, if we don't know who was the recipient of the trafficking, Fast Eddie? How does that entire trial exist? How do you convict a woman on sex trafficking of young girls if there are no people involved in the reception of the girls to have the sex that's alleged, right? I mean, how do you? On its face, I'm just talking out loud. I mean, can I convict you of trafficking young girls for sex with adult men, and yet also say, but we have no idea who any of the adult men are? Does that wash?
It honestly doesn't, because at this point you're going off of documentaries. You're going off of, things that are public. If Pam Bondi's saying that nothing exists officially, and that's not what she's seeing in the videos, and she's not seeing a list, I agree. How do you then put someone on trial based on what? Citizen journalism?
Back to X, some of the posts there. Pam Bondi said the Epstein client list was on her desk to review for release to the public just a few months ago. Now the DOJ she leads claims there's no Epstein client list. Sorry, but this was never acceptable. Was she lying then, or is she lying now? We deserve answers. Another said, to my point, so the girls who have testified about being raped on Epstein Island were lying? And Ghislaine Maxwell is in prison for being the madam for nobody? That's probably the best point for me. I can't substantiate what I know or don't know about what Pam Bondi said or is saying. I'm not going to prosecute Pam Bondi and the FBI. I don't know what they know. I don't know what they don't know. That would be purely speculative. What we do know are the public comments, and we do know the public trials, and we do know that there was a conviction. And so when you say there's evidence of girls having underage sex on videotape, and then you say, well, we don't know who any of them are, and so that's it. Good night. No one makes sense of that. I mean, let's just be honest, Fast Eddie, you can't make sense of that. I wouldn't want to anyway. I can't spin that in any positive light to make Pam Bondi look better. Not that I'm interested in it. I'm just saying I would love to try to give Ms. Bondi the benefit of the doubt, and I'm not able. I'm not that clever.
I don't know, Chris. You're not alone. This is a big letdown for many people, especially the victims. The victims of all this. Like that's honestly what I try to go back to. At the heart of this whole thing are people that were abused, young girls and women that were abused, and we have to be thinking of them.
Pam Bondi went in front of the entire nation, said the Epstein client list was on her desk.
30 seconds.
She should step down as Attorney General for lying to the American public, posted Savannah Hernandez, who contributes to Charlie Kirk's Turning Point, my colleague, Charlie Kirk. I have nothing to add. I wish I did, but I don't. This is the Stigall Show. I'm not sure what to make, again, as I say, of Pam Bondi, other than to say that much like Jeff Sessions in Trump's first term, a whole lot of nothing happened, and we became very, very frustrated. And you remember what happened to Jeff Sessions. He was summarily tossed. Who even remembers him? Who was talking about him today or then? I mean, gone. And then in came a guy called Bill Barr, who, by all accounts, had a sterling reputation and someone that we all, at that point, respected and trusted and seemed to be, Mr. Straight-Laced, and he was going to crack some skulls and come in and clean up shop. And that didn't really come to fruition either. There's something about this post of Attorney General, and I don't know what it is. I'm not an attorney. I've never worked in DOJ. I don't have friends and associates inside the DOJ. I guess I could probably get on the phone and call and get some, whispered down the lane guesses on what this might be. But I think it would ultimately be pretty fruitless. All I know for sure is you got a lot of very unhappy people today. I'm reading their comments on X. Mark Mitchell, guest of this show regularly, Rasmussen, who has consistently tracked President Trump's approval rating and popularity, which has remained, according to Rasmussen, pretty sky high. Does stuff like this dent it? I guess that's the next question. Do you think Pam Bondi's lack of producing on this starts to hurt President Trump, Fast Eddie?
I do. Yes, I do.
You do? Because you think ultimately Trump voters who want action on this Epstein stuff, if Pam Bondi's not delivering and they believe there's something there to deliver on, time to start holding Trump accountable for continuing to say Pam Bondi's great, she's a star, she's the best. So what? He knows something too then? Are we then implying if he continues to compliment her and slap her on the back and say, great job, Pam, and we think we know better, even though Pam Bondi has come out and said there's nothing there, we think she's sitting on something or we think there is something there, so then Trump becomes part of the cover-up? I'm just walking this out if that's where we're going.
If you're a journalist, whether on the right or the left, and you're committed to seeing this through and finding out what actually happened, and this is what drives you, then yes, I think this does get back to Trump in a negative light. Yeah.
Mark wrote, I'm seeing trust the plan stuff tonight. Okay, maybe, but the plan would go a hell of a lot better if communications and expectations were managed to increase public trust. Hard to disagree with that. Very hard to disagree with that statement. Managing expectations to increase public trust and communicating it properly. Transparency. Or saying nothing. I would have been... Let me ask it this way. If Pam Bondi hadn't said a word, if she hadn't gone on her Fox News blitzkrieg for the first months of this administration, promising this and promising that, holding press conferences and holding court constantly on the media, if she had not done that, and then she came out today and said, after an exhaustive 6-month analysis of this, we've reached the conclusion there is no evidence to substantiate anything other than suicide. Furthermore, after extensive investigation, we have no evidence that there's any documentation of a client list to go after individual men who trafficked in sex with young girls. I don't think that would have ameliorated people's suspicions, but I think it would be better than coming out a few months ago promising that you got all this stuff that you're going to be combing through, building and building and building, putting on this public show of bringing certain right-wing influencers into the fold and showing them with the binders, only to deliver nothing at all. What they did was artificially build an expectation here that there were things coming and that we were going to see. The last time that I remember feeling like this was when James Comey, I've told you the story before, when James Comey came out around the 4th of July, 2016, and said, look, yeah, Hillary Clinton did a whole bunch of stuff she shouldn't have done, but we've concluded ultimately that she didn't mean to, so we're recommending she not be prosecuted. That's the last time I remember feeling this kind of empty, for want of a better term. This is the Stigall Show. Back again for Balance of Nature, and in the Maha movement, one thing we all care about is what's in the container, the ingredients. You flip that thing over, and if you can't pronounce it and you don't recognize it, you put it back. I've seen my kids doing this now. They're very health conscious that way. I like that. And the next generation seems to be more so, and that's why I tell them Balance of Nature, and you can feel good about it too. Balance of Nature is just that. It's nothing more than natural. Fruit and vegetable, plucked right from the soil. No binders, no additives, no fillers. Harvested ingredients that are freeze-dried into a fine powder, and then they use an advanced vacuum cold process to better preserve the nutritional value in that powder. you can know with confidence that you're talking about 31 ingredients that are strictly fruits and vegetables. Every single day, that's what you get in your balance of nature. Imagine a platter with 31 different fruits and vegetables on it. Join me. Take some balance of nature and get healthy. Use that discount code Chris. 35% off plus free shipping when you do. You got to use the discount code Chris, though. All right, so here it is again, the number 800-2468-751. Use the discount code Chris or order online, balanceofnature.com. Discount code Chris to get that 35% off plus free shipping. Hey there, it's Chris Stigall. You know, this past summer, I went on a cruise with Dr. Sebastian Gorka, Mike Gallagher, my Salem radio colleagues, and I met so many listeners like you who have been on my PhD weight loss program journeys, and I decided for myself it was time to jump in. I wanted to give this Dr. Ashley everybody's been talking about call myself. Dr. Ashley Lucas and her team customize plans for your body to make weight loss simple, and they provide 80% of your food at no additional cost. They treat your whole person, and so I've decided to join so many of you. Join Sebastian Gorka, join Mike Gallagher, and all the weight they've lost, I'd like to do it myself. I've decided to call up my PhD weight loss. I hope you'll join me. Maybe we can start this weight loss journey together. Reach out, get started. Tell them I sent you and said hi. I'd love to hear how you're doing at 864-664-1900. That's 864-664-1900 or myphdweightloss.com. Don't forget to tell them Chris Stigall is going to start losing weight with you. Well, good morning, folks, on this Monday edition of the Stigall Show after a long holiday weekend for most of us. Hope you enjoyed your 4th of July, your Independence Day, as we look live in Houston. Just a stone's throw, sadly, from Kerrville, Texas, and the tragedy that has unfolded there as some 80 people lost their lives. Another 40-some are missing, and many presumed lost, but still haven't given up hope on the search and rescue efforts down there. We continue to watch, and we pray so fervently for our friends. Those of you who listen in Texas or watching on the Salem News Channel, I know that weighs particularly heavy on you today. So as we learn more, or there's more that we can do here, we will stay close to it. Obviously right now, they're quite literally waiting for the floodwaters to recede and trying to figure out just exactly what the picture looks like. But once we have a more full picture of the need there, I think we certainly intend to try to do what we can to be helpful. But for now, we certainly fervently pray that the loss of life is mitigated to the extent that it can be. Our telephone number is 855-STIGALL if you want to get in here today, 855-784-4255. Still to come, Erin Maguire, Mondays with Maguire, great Republican strategist, Elon Musk threatening third party. What does that mean exactly? And speaking of Texas, our great friend Bonchie over there at Red State, he's got a lot to say about many things. That tragedy, not the least of which, but also with this threat of Elon Musk and third-party chatter, the big, beautiful bill, and Pam Bondi's lack of production on the Epstein thing. You know what I just said on X a minute ago, if you follow on X? I said this, and this is the best way I can phrase it. When you, and I hate conspiracy. I loathe conspiracy, okay? I loathe it. But when you say, I have no evidence of any guys abusing girls underage sexually, I have no evidence. We have none. I can't prove to you there's a single guy that had underage sex courtesy of Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell and child prostitution. We can't produce one name. Sorry. When you say that to me, that's like saying Hillary Clinton didn't intend to break the law keeping an illegal server. Or Hunter Biden's laptop is Russian disinformation and isn't real. Again, those aren't conspiracies. That's just you're stating the obvious to the American public and then expecting us to just go, oh, well, okay, I guess if that's your attitude about it. It's not plausible. It's just silly. And it's frustrating that that's what we're left with. And I wish I knew where to go with it from here, but I have nothing really more to add than that. What I do have to add, though, is that Congress is playing right now a very, very dangerous game with your health care. And if they don't stop, there are millions of Americans that are going to pay the price for it. And this tax package that is being bandied about in the future here, they're considering excessive government mandates coming down the pike and bureaucratic red tape targeting individual health insurance markets. Also, failing to avert a massive looming healthcare tax hike. That's why there's Americans for a Balanced Budget. They know these policies would lead to millions of people losing their health care, spiking healthcare costs, creating major strain on our healthcare system, leaving taxpayers footing the bill, threatening affordable healthcare coverage for 24 million Americans, millions more off their coverage entirely. Now, that's not going to fix our healthcare system. It would make it collapse. That's why real solutions are needed to root out waste and fraud, not policies that limit choices for millions of hardworking Americans. Americans for a Balanced Budget, sounding the alarm and demanding Congress stop these harmful mandates and avert a massive tax hike on your health care. And your voice counts here. You can still get involved at stophealthcosthikes.com. Tell Congress to eliminate government mandates and red tape targeting the individual healthcare marketplace. Stophealthcosthikes.com. Stophealthcosthikes.com. And as always, portions of this show are sponsored in part by the people at Americans for a Balanced Budget. We appreciate their time and their warning on that. Now, let's go to the big, beautiful bill. The folks on the Sunday shows were out in full force from the Trump administration, trying to convince you that what Elon and others have said about the spending in it is leading to nothing but massive, massive deficits and Medicaid cuts and all the awful stuff. Scott Bessent, a guy whose voice we trust here, has been in the game, in the private sector game, for 35 years, headed out there to tackle this on CNN. 2793. Here's the Secretary of the Treasury.
I'm sure you've seen and heard a lot of the concern, including and especially from Republicans who are the most vocal in Congress, about the fact that those work requirements are going to be very cumbersome to actually prove, and it will inevitably force the people who need that Medicaid coverage off the rolls.
Well, first of all, the Republicans are not the most vocal on this. It is a group of Democrats who unfortunately seem to think that poor people are stupid. I don't think poor people are stupid. I think they have agency, and I think to have them register twice a year for these benefits, that is not a burden. But these people who want to infantilize the poor and those who need these Medicaid benefits are alarmist.
Yeah, but my impression of the Republican Party is that historically you've wanted to cut through the red tape and not create more red tape. But I do want to move on because...
Well, no. But we've also wanted to put in work requirements, which somehow that was very popular under Bill Clinton, was popular under President Obama, and this Democratic Party blew out the deficit in 2020, and they never want to bring it back. But work requirements even poll well with the median Democratic voter, maybe not the fringe.
Yeah. Again, I think messaging on this particular component of it, Republicans did not handle well. Does anybody think that an able-bodied 25-year-old man should be receiving Medicaid? Fast Eddie, is there a single American who would say to you with a straight face and look you in the eye, I think it's fine that a 32-year-old able-bodied man is sitting at home collecting a Medicaid check? Anybody?
Not that I can think of off the top of my head, no.
Why is this not being prosecuted more? Because there are millions of able-bodied men in this country not working and drawing Medicaid. Do you know that? Do we talk about that? We don't. Maybe it's on me. Maybe I haven't spent enough time on this show saying that. Do you understand there are millions of able-bodied young men in this country collecting your tax dollars for welfare rather than work? And I want someone to explain to me why that's okay. Can you, Fast Eddie? I know you can't because you don't believe it's okay, but can you spin it for me? Because we're told this is just the worst thing. To demand that people not get your tax dollars to sit on their asses at home instead of work. This is awful. It's a cut.
It just hasn't been worded that way. It's the Democrats have been allowed to frame this as, well, you're cutting Medicaid benefits for this amount of people, for millions of Americans. That's all. It really hasn't been rebutted properly.
2795, more Bessent trying to tackle this subject by himself.
The president promised that there would not be changes to Medicaid benefits, and putting a work requirement is by definition, a change to benefits.
No, there are no change in benefits. There's a change in requirements to get the benefits. And what we are doing, we are bringing back manufacturing jobs. We are bringing back working class jobs. By securing the border, we have already seen working class wages move up. So we are creating jobs. People can get off Medicaid and get a job that has good health care benefits.
Yeah, it's a shame he's left out there to twist in the wind on this. I would have liked to have seen us get in front of this debate much earlier and explain that there are a lot of people drawing. Like, it's okay for Republicans to say there are millions of people collecting Medicaid that shouldn't be. And I'm not sure why they're afraid to say it, but people need to man up and woman up and say it on the Republican side. There are millions of people bilking taxpayers collecting welfare that shouldn't be, and we're going to stop that. It has to be said. Why people won't say it is beyond me. Stephen Moran, a guest on this show late last week, chair of the Council of Economic Advisors, ran over to ABC to tackle the big, beautiful bill messaging, 2798.
It's the same combination of policies, tax cuts, deregulation, trade renegotiation, and energy abundance that gave us astounding economic growth in the president's first term, 2.8% until the pandemic. And that's exactly what we forecast again, very similar numbers.
That was 1 year.
No. 2017 to 2019, the annualized rate over those 3 years was 2.8%, right? Very high economic growth as a result of these same policies. And that's just a statistical fact. And so what the people who predict big deficits don't understand is that economic growth is going to soar in response to these policies. If you give massive incentives for investment, huge incentives for new factories, full expensing on new factories, full expensing on equipment, full expensing on R&D expenditures, that incentivizes more of this stuff. You're going to get more people investing in factories as a result of these tax benefits. More investment means more income means more tax revenue. And as a result, deficits go down.
Now, this, as a sort of a historical context, Mr. Moran is exactly right. When you reduce taxes and you give tax incentives to people, commerce is boosted, revenue is generated, and more flows into the United States Treasury. Now, when this stuff is scored by the CBO, it's just considered static. It's considered a cost. So in other words, you take $1,000 out of your savings account and spend it on marketing. Some would say, well, you're $1,000 down. You can't afford that. Others would say, well, you just invested $1,000 to draw more people to your business. Do you see the difference? That's how the Trump administration is looking at it versus the CBO. More in a minute. Old friend of the show, Kevin Hassett, returning to the audio here over the weekend as the Trump team puts on a full-court press on the passage of the big, beautiful bill. Kevin Hassett's the National Economic Council director, and he had this to say in 2799.
I know that the administration says the bill will actually shrink the deficit by $1.5 trillion. Help me understand why there is such a drastic difference between your number and all those others.
Well, first of all, let's remember that science is not democracy. Truth is not democracy. Our estimates are based on modeling that we used last time when I was chairman of the Council of Economic Advisors to say what would happen if we had a bill, how much growth we would get. And we said, and we were criticized soundly, that we would get 3% growth. And we even had the really technical macroeconomic models that said that we would get 3% growth. We run the same models through this tax bill. It's even better. And what we're seeing is that if you get 3% growth again, then that's $4 trillion more in revenue than the CBO and these other bodies are giving us credit for. They have been wrong in the past, and they're being wrong again in our belief. But the thing that disappoints me is that if I put out a model and I say, hey, here's what's going to happen, we're going to get 3% growth, and then it turns out it's 1.5% growth, then as an academic economist, as a scientist, then it's my duty to say, what did I get wrong? What did my model miss? These people aren't doing that. And that's the thing that I find disappointing, because we put peer-reviewed academic stuff on the table, said we're going to get that 3% growth, and then we got it right last time, and we believe we're going to get it right this time. But if you think that 1.8% growth is what's going to happen over the next 10 years, then you should agree with the CBO number. But there's another part of the CBO number that you need to worry about, and that is that if we don't pass the bill, then it's the biggest tax hike in history. And with that big tax hike, then of course we would have a recession. The CEA says that we'd have about a 4% drop in GDP and lose 9 million jobs. If we had a 4% drop in GDP and we lost 9 million jobs, what would happen to the deficit? deficit. And so I don't think that the CBO has a very strong record. I don't think these places have a very strong record. And what they need to do is get back to the basics of looking at macroeconomic models. There's a really famous macroeconomist at Harvard named Jim Stock.
Yeah, that's good. Look, this thing has federal income tax codified, small business deductions, tax relief. That stimulates the economy. People understand that. More in a minute. A lot of news over the last few days, this long Independence Day weekend for most of us. Some tragic, some confounding, some infuriating, some exciting, and here to cover it all, I watch him, I follow him. You should too on X if you don't. He's a colleague of mine at redstate.com. He's Bonchie. And Bonchie, we're glad to have you to kick off the week. Good morning.
Good morning. Good to be here.
I'm not really sure where to start. I've been trying to tackle it all this morning. It's a bit of a fire hydrant. We could take it in chronological order, or we could take it kind of in what is staring us most closely in the face. I know, I believe, if memory serves, you're a Texan, and I think I'll probably start there just because, I guess predictably vile nature of people on the left trying to politicize it is gross. But before we even go there, I don't know geographically where you are related to the flooding in the Guadalupe River, but I know anybody in Texas, this is uniquely painful.
Absolutely. I'm not in that area of Texas, but my thoughts and prayers go out to the people that are suffering. I have children. I can't fathom what parents are going through, those that have lost their children and those that haven't got the news yet. But, as the timeline marches on, it becomes a recovery operation and the chance of good news gets more remote. I can't imagine what they're going through, and I just pray that we still see a few more miracles before this is up.
This is an event that is surrounded by people of faith. Governor Abbott, President Trump called for a day of prayer yesterday. I know we prayed about it in my church. People were all over the country, but it's also remarkable in that this struck a Christian camp. And these kids were, not only were they kids, but they were kids there to worship and grow in their relationship with Christ, which I guess if there's any solace to be taken, some of those children, at least we know, had a relationship with the Lord, which makes it painful and confusing, but it also is this opening, I think, for leftists. I was saying this earlier in the show. It's this opportunity for the atheist types or whatever to take a blunt force instrument to people of faith. It's pretty gross, whether they're trying to make an assault on people of faith or whether they're trying to make an assault on conservative politics.
Yeah, those that would do that simply don't understand Christianity and what it means to follow Christ. It doesn't mean that everything's going to go right and that there's never going to be tragedy in life. We're still subject to a fallen world, and bad things happen, but that our faith is not dictated by outcomes. And so, I think anybody that would take that and try to attack Christians or somehow suggest that these people deserved it because they vote a certain way. I mean, first of all, children don't vote, so they certainly don't deserve anything, much less death because their parents voted for Donald Trump. This is something that's been suggested by several bigger influencer and media types, or kind of left-wing media types, not somebody on like CNN, thankfully. But I just think it's gross how people have rushed to politicize this in ways that are completely baseless and make no sense at all, just because they don't have the capacity to empathize for people that disagree with them politically.
Bonchie wrote a couple of days ago at redstate.com, as the death toll rises in Texas, Democrats choose to be black-souled evil ghouls. Well put, worth the read. He's been busy. It's been a busy few days, even over the holiday weekend. No rest for the wicked bunch. Here's the other thing that I tackled off the top today, because again, it's staring us in the face. Not exactly the way I wanted to start the week, but Pam Bondi and this Epstein business. Listen, as I posted this morning, I don't know the woman. I had no feeling about the woman. I know there were people in this audience who called me when she was named Trump's pick who said, I don't like her, I don't like this pick, I don't trust her. And I said, listen, I trust Trump. That's my default position. And Trump has continued to say over these many months, she's a star, she's fantastic, she's, lights out the best. And so I said, okay, he must see something in her that I don't. He must understand something about her that I don't. I've given her the benefit of the doubt. I said, let's wait and see. Let's withhold judgment. For her to come out over the weekend and say, we got nothing. There's no there. Sorry. Epstein killed himself, and we don't have any client list. Good night, everybody. That's like the Hillary server thing. That's the Hunter Biden laptop thing. We just don't buy it, do we?
I don't think many people are going to buy the totality of the narrative that was released last night. I think even dropping it late on a Sunday evening in the middle of all this tragedy that's going on is a little too transparent as far as what they're trying to do with this. My opinion is that I could buy that he committed suicide. We've all made Epstein didn't kill himself jokes, and it's a meme, and I get it. It's not important to proving his criminality and the extensiveness of what he did for him to have been murdered, in my opinion. So that doesn't stick with me that much. It doesn't bother me that much that they say, hey, look, we have this surveillance video, and they were released 10 hours showing no one going in and out. Then if there's no evidence that he was murdered, okay. And also understand the idea that there's no client list. But let me qualify that with this. There's a difference between having an actual physical list, which would be unlikely and stupid, because why would somebody incriminate themselves like that, and the question of whether he had clients. And I think very few people are going to believe that he was doing all of this and just trafficking women to no one, and that the only other person involved in this scheme was Ghislaine Maxwell. I don't buy it. I don't think many people are going to buy it. You look at how many people, powerful, rich people, went to that island of his where we know all of this was going on, and the DOJ and FBI have all of these videos of women being abused, and we're supposed to believe that absolutely no one else was involved in that, including the people that some of the victims have named in some of these lawsuits and have seemingly never been pursued by the government at all. So I think it's an obfuscation for whatever reason. Perhaps there really are issues with not having enough evidence or whatever, but I wish they would at least come out and say that, as opposed to kind of just saying, oh, there's no clients list, let's move on, because it feels like this story is just dead now. Who is going to pick this up and investigate further at this point? I think the answer is probably no one.
It's an odd thing that popped in my head when I heard this announcement from Bondi, but the first thing I thought about was last week and the jury's finding in the Sean Combs trial. And the reason I went there is because there's a case where federal prosecutors just went guns a-blazing at the guy, and a jury said, you don't have the stuff. A jury of his peers said, you guys are totally out of line and overzealous here. He's guilty of a little prostitution, but that's that. And I said on X last week, it always seems like federal law enforcement these days is overzealous and overly aggressive on things that don't make sense, while seemingly, to me as a layman, without knowing the facts, I'll confess, turning a blind eye or just shrugging their shoulders and saying, well, that's that, and dusting their hands off and moving on. It's infuriating to watch guys like Trump targeted once upon a time, and we could go on and down the list, and then watch other people like Hillary Clinton, Hunter Biden, and now Jeffrey Epstein effectively walk, proverbially.
I think it's a fair frustration. It does seem like when it comes to certain political classes and powerful people in the world, that that the federal government just all of a sudden loses its desire to try to push anything when it comes to trying to seek accountability. So, like you said, we don't have all the answers. We don't have every unredacted part of the file. We don't know every piece of evidence that they have. But it just seems so weird that Bondi went on TV and said, I have the client list on my desk. Yes. We're not misinterpreting that. She said that. And then
she's a problem, isn't she? I mean, I'm sorry, I don't know how else to say this. She's a problem. She's a communications problem. Mark over at Rasmussen said it would be one thing if you managed expectations and communicated better, but this was so poorly messaged. I mean, what are we left with?
And I think it's, the nicest explanation is that she just got out over her skis and was trying to kind of promote herself in the department, but in that case, man, you shouldn't be doing that in the first place. Then just go do your job. Like, I don't need you to be an influencer. I don't need you to be on Fox News every 5 minutes. You know what I mean? Just go do your job properly and pursue people that need to be pursued and follow the evidence where it goes. Like, if that is the reason that she did this, then like you said, like I think it's an example of where she needs to pull back and just focus more on her job then, because she's setting these expectations as if she's some kind of online influencer, and then she doesn't follow through, and everybody's mad justifiably. So, you can't tell Fox News. I think she was talking to Jesse Waters when she did that. You have the list on your desk and you're vetting it. It's going to be released any moment, and then all of a sudden it's, well, we don't have a timeline. And then on a Sunday evening news drop in the middle of one of the worst domestic tragedies in years, you just kind of put out a memo and a tape and say, well, this is it, and it's over. I don't think it's going to sit well with many, many people. And you can go on X right now and you can see people kind of fuming over it. And even huge supporters of the Trump administration are not happy with how that was handled.
Yeah, it's brutal. I only have a couple of seconds. Do you want to handicap Elon challenging Trump in the third-party business? I've literally got like 15 seconds.
I think Elon will get bored with it. And in a few months, we won't even be talking about this anymore.
Yeah, well, your lips to God's ears. We're glad to kick off the week with you, Bonchie. Thanks always for your analysis. We appreciate you. At redstate.com. Follow him on X at Bonchie. At Red State Bonchie, that is. Or Bonchie Red State. Thank you, sir. More in a minute. Sit tight. There was some good news about jobs heading into the weekend. And June, better than expected job creation, 2782. Take a listen.
You expected some of this, but this is better than expected?
Yeah, Sarah, it is. Look, this jobs market is like the Energizer Bunny. Every single time we expect it to run out of steam, it just keeps going and going. So these new numbers show that the U.S. economy added 147,000 jobs in June. That was well ahead of the expectation of about 118,000, well ahead of some whispers that we heard on Wall Street of a sub 100,000 number. So this is indeed beating expectations. We were also expecting a slowdown. We did not get that. This is basically in line with May, which was revised higher. It's also good news. The unemployment rate was expected to go up. It didn't. It went down to 4.1%. That is a very healthy number. This is still relatively historically low. And again, it's below the 4.3% that we had expected.
Well, now, and that's over at CNN. Now, imagine if Jerome Powell got off his duff, too late Powell, as Trump calls it, and lowered interest rates. Imagine what that would do for the economy right now, and he should. A lot of people concerned about this tariff business. President Trump is facing a crucial week for reaching trade deals. In fact, this is from the Wall Street Journal. He has scored several big wins in the past 2 weeks, including signing his tax and domestic policy mega bill, helping broker a ceasefire between Israel and Iran. Jobs growth in June, steadier than economists had expected, signaling strength in the economy. And now he's going to attempt to build on momentum by tackling a series of trade agreements that have proven elusive ahead of a fast-approaching deadline. Here he is, 2788 over the weekend, talking about this very thing.
Yesterday, great deal, 40% on transshipping. Can we expect any more of that before next week, sir?
So we have a couple of other deals, but my inclination is to send a letter out and saying what tariff they're going to be paying. It's just much easier. We have, far more than 170 countries. And how many deals can you make? And you can make good deals, but they're very much more complicated. I'd rather, and I've been like this from the beginning, I'd rather send out a letter saying this is what you're going to pay to do business in the United States. And I think it'll be well received. I think it's just so many countries. And, then they go specific. Let's do this, let's do that, beef, ethanol. And I'd rather just do a simple deal where you can maintain it and control it. You're going to pay a 20% or 25 or 30% tariff.
You brought in a record amount.
We're going to be sending some letters out starting probably tomorrow, maybe 10 a day, to various countries saying what they're going to pay to do business with the U.S.
Okay, so Trump says, if you're having a hard time hearing that, he basically said, look, these countries are coming to me, they're saying they want to take this out, they want to take that out. I want it clean, I want it across the board. You tariff us this, we're tariffing you that. We're not going to make this complex. Get this done, or here's the tax. He wants to lock this down and move on and move past it. Stephen Moran, back to him. He's the chair of the Council of Economic Advisors. He's the guy that was with us last week talking about Trump and tariffs related to China in 2797.
I think that there's been a lot of doom mongering, a lot of scaremongering, and this isn't the first time, by the way. During the president's first term, lots of folks said that the president's historic tariffs on China during the first term were going to be terrible for the economy, and there was no lasting evidence of that whatsoever. There was no meaningful economic inflation, no meaningful economic slowdown. Everything was actually pretty okay in response to the tariffs last time, and thus far, again, this time we have a repeat of the same performance, whereby lots of folks predicted that it would end the world, there would be some sort of disastrous outcome. And once again, tariff revenue is pouring in. There's no sign of any economically significant inflation whatsoever, and job creation remains healthy.
And that is, again, back to the Jerome Powell situation, why interest rates ought to come down. Jerome Powell continues to insinuate that it's the unknown about tariffs that he won't lower interest rates, which is a joke. He's a hyper-partisan guy, and tariffs, there is no reason to think at this point. I mean, if tariffs were going to do anything to the jobs market, it'd have done it. If it were going to do anything to the economy, it would have done it. So we've been a couple of months into this cycle now with nothing but upside and revenues pouring into the Treasury. Jerome Powell lowers interest rates and he lights a match to kerosene on the economy, in my view. We're already seeing an uptick because the big, beautiful bill was passed. Tax cuts are now codified, and businesses now have a better understanding of their tax burdens. Jerome Powell's the missing link here. Quick break. Here we are, 2025. Happy New Year, and our friends at Gulag America are back and along for the ride. You know, they have been not only great sponsors, but they have been ride or die founders at the Harump Society. I am so appreciative for our friends at Gulag America. I love the work they do. And we have every reason to be optimistic in this new year. They are, we are, all of us are. America's resurgence, it's back. Trump's back. And Gulag America wants to continue to be your premier source for topical and satirical apparel and other gear designed to help give you voice for your love of liberty and your desire to see America great again. I know we all share that in common. Gulag America does too, but that doesn't mean that the deep state's not going to be busy at work. They're not going to go gently into the good night, as they say. So Gulag America is ready. They want you battle ready. They want you geared up, and they've got hilarious stuff for you to buy, and they're going to give it to you at a deep discount to kick off the new year. You ready for this? You take 15% off all orders at gulagamerica.com when you use my promo code Chris15. So if you go shopping today and you see a shirt you like, and you will because they're hilarious, go to gulagamerica.com. Type the promo code Chris15. That's Chris15. Type it in the checkout, and then you'll save big. Enjoy the new year. Enjoy new savings with that same quality, that same hilarious attitude that you've come to expect from our buddies at Gulag America, where they say, it's not our wish, it is our warning. Hey there, it's Chris from my good friends at Texas Bullion Exchange, the good people that tell you there is no reason to live with all of this angst and anxiety about the markets going up and the markets going down. Why don't you just do something that has helped people calm their nerves in volatile markets for years? Texas Bullion Exchange, real physical gold as part of your savings. That's what they do. It's not about getting rich quick, mind you. It's about helping protect what you've already earned. And if you join Texas Bullion Exchange's Principal Protection Program, you're going to get 3% bonus in silver on your entire gold portfolio. Now, this program protects the value of what you've earned. So when you put it into gold and then it's time to sell, you get back what you paid. Never less. In fact, usually it's more, but it's never less. And isn't that reassuring? This program protects the value of your gold. Take the pressure off. You and your loved ones can face the future with confidence when you put gold in your savings and claim your 3% in bonus silver when you do it. 855-839-2728 is their number. 855-837-2728. Or visit buytexasgold.com. Again, 855-839-2728 or buytexasgold.com. It's Texas Bullion Exchange. Experience, integrity, and value. Glad to have you along, folks. Welcome in on this Monday edition of the Stigall Show. I hope you had a safe and blessed 4th of July, Independence Day holiday weekend. Hope you were able to take some time off to relax and celebrate with friends and family. A lot of news happening, both tragic exhilarating, frustrating, and we're unpacking it all here this morning. Our telephone number is 855-STIGAL if you want to get in here, 855-784-4255. Today at the Harumph Society, I talk a little bit about this Mad Manny, as I call him, the guy that may become the next mayor of New York City. We are at a real crossroads in the country, I don't have to tell you, when some of our major American cities are now considering electing a full-blown, unapologetic, just straight up, right out there, Islamist socialist, a collectivist. And as I wrote today at the Harumph Society, that old saying, you can vote your way into socialism, I think Reagan said it famously, you can vote your way into socialism, but you'll have to shoot your way out. And, look, to be fair, I think Elon knows this too. I think Elon knows that we are, and it is undoubtedly true, as a country, we are on our way. We are careening off a cliff fiscally. There's no doubt about it. Now, here's the thing. The economics of what was just passed in this big, beautiful bill, Team Trump believes, and I tend to side with them. I think there's some pretty smart economic guys in Bessent and Hassett and others who have said that what the CBO and others who are talking about this just being all deficit related aren't taking into account is the massive revenue that they believe will come pouring in. Of course, that remains to be seen, but I think that's going to historically be true. It has always been true before when people's tax rates are kept low, when businesses know how to prepare and understand their tax rates are safe for the future, when they benefit in the tax code through investment, that means a return to the Treasury. It always has. It means job creation, and job creation was booming again in June. So people that are creating, and real jobs, by the way, and that's the important thing to remember, real jobs, not government jobs, which of course goes back to collectivism and socialism. When you grow jobs in this country, and the only way the jobs are growing, as was under Biden, was taxpayer subsidized jobs, and I'm not demeaning everybody who collects a check from the United States government, but let's be honest, that's who you're, even if you work hard and you have a noble and great job, if you collect a check from a government agency, you're collecting a check from taxpayers. Government doesn't make anything. The only way you have a paycheck is if those of us who are working in the private sector are paying our taxes. That's the only way anything operates. And collectivists want to continue to grow and grow and grow this thing called government, while stifling those of us who work in the free market. And collectivism, as I write today at the Harumph Society in 2025, it wears a new mask. It wears a mask by calling themselves wealth taxes or promises of giving away free everything. But it demands your liberty. Communism, socialism, it abhors people of faith, human rights, natural rights, the very things that we celebrate. Socialism prioritizes equality, equity over outcomes, meaning everything's got to be equal. No matter the work that you've put in, no matter the investment, everything's got to be equal. So equality of outcomes is the thing that's most important. Ambition, that's not to be rewarded. That's secondary if it matters at all. So, look, let's go to some of the audio here, because this guy, he's someone that we should pay close attention to. I know it's easy to just kind of dismiss this guy as wacko, but he lingers large out there, because if this is the definition of the new party, I mean, as Elon threatens a third party, a third way, the Democrat left, if there are any people left that call themselves Democrats that are concerned about this, they have a funny way of showing it. That's all I'll say. Hakeem Jeffries talking about this a little bit in 2800.
Now, a quick follow-up. New York City Mayor Eric Adams is attacking Mamdani over reports that he identified himself as African-American and Asian on college application. Mamdani was born in Uganda, his parents from India. What are your thoughts on this issue? Mamdani has checked multiple boxes trying to capture what he calls the fullness of his background. I mean, is this a real issue to you?
I think to me, the issue that we have to deal with in New York City, which our Democratic nominee did talk about extensively during the primary campaign, is affordability. And particularly in many of the neighborhoods that are being overwhelmed by gentrification and wiped out by housing displacement, that whoever's going to be the next mayor of the city of New York really needs to articulate a concrete plan for making sure that working class communities, including working class neighborhoods of color, can still have a place in our great city, the city that both of us love, but we know is changing significantly in terms of the opportunity for working families and middle class folks to be able to continue to call it home.
Equal outcomes, right? The great Democrat promise of equal outcomes if you just elect them. It's interesting. Look at a couple of major American cities run by Democrats this weekend. In my beloved Philadelphia, we're looking at 7 straight days of a garbage strike. It was a patriotic night along the Ben Franklin Parkway as people came out to celebrate Independence Day, but this 4th of July coincided with the 4th day at that time of a strike by union workers. District Council 33. Members picketed outside the gates of the Wawa Welcome America Festival on Friday afternoon. Mayor Parker says the city is still working to iron out a deal. The city's broke. The city doesn't have money to give raises to unions. We're working extremely hard. We're doing what we can, Philadelphians, to reach a fair, fiscally responsible contract with our municipal workers. And as trash piles up 6 and 7 feet high in the streets of Philadelphia, citizens are now so desperate and buried in garbage, they're just telling their government, give the unions whatever they want. Just give them whatever they want. I also saw, incidentally, that the water department was trying to assure everybody, don't sweat it. We're going to protect the water supply. What was that about, Fast Eddie? Again, this is the utopia of Democrats, total collectivist, single-party rule, Democrat control.
I'm not sure entirely. All I can remember is that we spent the money. This was the Jim Kenney administration before Sherrell Parker. The pumps on 676 broke in case of flooding. So remember the money that was supposed to be used for the pumps wasn't used. So I'm guessing that maybe there's a shortfall in the water department funds or personnel this time.
Yeah, the Democrat utopia. Tax the people of means, and yet somehow they're trying to assure the public the water is safe, and they've got 7 feet of garbage on their street. Meanwhile, in Chicago, 50, I didn't say 15, I said 50 people were shot over the weekend and 6 killed. And the American left coldly mocks young people camping at a Christian camp in Texas after a natural disaster. You know, there's natural disasters, and then there's actually man-made disasters called the Democrat Party, and they're about to go even further in New York City. I mean, in Chicago, in Philadelphia, in Detroit, in major failing American cities, they're run by Democrats who are still at least trying to keep it at bay and mask it. But in New York, they're about to just rip the mask right off and go full-blown collectivist Islamist. It's horrifying, actually. 7 feet of garbage, 50 people shot, and Democrats cheer for more aggressive, harder, faster. Give us more of it. Chicago experienced another violent 4th of July weekend. 6 people killed, 50 people shot. I don't know. It will forever consume me, the idea that people can look at the Democrat Party today and see anything redeeming in it. And I am not suggesting, and I understand that there are plenty of concerns and problems to have with the Republican Party. I get it, and I know many of you do. And I don't call myself a Republican. I'm always very clear about that. I don't cheerlead for the GOP, but I also don't believe, as Elon has invested his time and resources now apparently into creating this third way, I don't think that viable either. I've written about that at the Jerome Society. I'll continue to talk about it. I'm going to talk with Erin Maguire about it in a little bit. I do think if what he's trying to do is push Republicans through force of threat, his means, his money, to get Republicans talking in a meaningful way about truly offering an opposite to this collectivism and this big spending, if that's what Elon's trying to accomplish, I support that. This is the Stigall Show. So I've had some people snarking at me, you know, Stigall, this obsession with the Epstein thing, you got to move on, you got to move past it, this is ridiculous, there are bigger fish to fry, blah, blah, blah. You know, somebody snarked at me, you know what you're not talking about? John Brennan. That report was released over the weekend, and you're not talking about that. Folks, I don't know. Again, you may be new to the show, and I stipulate that you may be new to the show, but if you're familiar at all with my show over the many, many years I've done it, granted I've not done it here in this format, except for the last 6 months, John Brennan has been discussed extensively. The Russia collusion hoax has been discussed extensively. I don't know a single credible show that hasn't brought that up as a concern. And yes, I get it, a bombshell new CIA review of the Obama administration's spy agency's assessment. Russia interfered in the 2016 presidential election. Trump was, and they asserted he was deliberately corrupted. And that was all concocted by then CIA Director John Brennan, as well as FBI Director James Comey and Director of National Intelligence James Clapper, who were all excessively involved in the drafting and then rushed a chaotic, atypical, and markedly unconventional process, raising questions about political motive. Brennan's decision to include the discredited Steele dossier over objections of the CIA's most senior Russian experts undermined the credibility of the assessment. This was called the Tradecraft Review of the 2016 Intelligence Community Assessment on Russian Election Interference, and it was conducted by career professionals at the CIA, directed by John Ratcliffe in May. The Lessons Learned Review found that on December 6, 2016, 6 weeks before his presidency ended, Barack Obama ordered the assessment, which concluded Russian President Vladimir Putin aspired to help Trump win the election. So you say, Stigall, and this from Brian Dean Wright over at Fox News, John Brennan was my boss at the CIA. He belongs in prison. The CIA releasing fresh details about the creation nearly 10 years ago of the agency's intelligence assessment, finding Putin aspired to help Donald Trump. That assessment was ordered by John Brennan, and it ignited the whole Trump-Russia collusion hoax. And you say, or some have said, so Stigall, instead of talking about Epstein, you ought to be talking about that. Okay. I'll talk about that. I just have. I acknowledge it. Of course, we knew it was a hoax. Of course, it was politically motivated. Of course, everybody from Chris Wray to John Brennan to James Comey are all corrupt partisan hacks who used the power and influence of their agencies and their status to draft a report to try to compromise President Trump's electability, and ultimately defeat him a second time around by dismissing Donald Trump's claims and ultimately proven true assertions that the Hunter Biden laptop was real, and actually kept him from winning that second term. So yes, there has been an active deep state conspiracy to defeat and defraud and discredit Donald Trump. We know that, and we know the principals' names. Here's my question to those of you that say, stop spending so much time on Epstein and focus on the real stuff. Who's going to hold John Brennan and James Comey and James Clapper responsible? Who's going to take them to task? Who's going to prosecute them? More in a minute. It's Monday, and after a long holiday weekend, and in fact, I happen to, because I follow her on social media, I happen to see that she was a lady about town. Erin Maguire, my favorite Republican strategist, which is why we call this Mondays with Maguire now. I happen to see her out doing the most patriotic kind of celebrating that there could be over this 4th of July. Erin, good morning.
Good morning, Chris. Yes, I was very fortunate. Got to go to the White House and enjoy the 4th of July on the lawn with President Trump, dancing up a storm, watching the fireworks. It was a great evening, a beautiful weekend in Washington, D.C. There are a few places that it's actually better to be in D.C. than 4th of July. That is the time to be in Washington. It's a great celebration.
I saw some people. Somebody made the point, and I don't know if you saw. Probably, if you're on social media, you saw the clip or the photo of going around of Trump standing in the foreground. His silhouette. He's got his arms outstretched as the night sky is just illuminated with fireworks. And somebody made the point how infuriating it must be to the left that every time the man steps out of doors, there's some new iconic photo of him taken. Just by just showing up every time the man makes a new iconic photo.
I mean, it's true. There's no showman. That nobody knows a camera angle better, a shot better. I mean, Donald Trump delivers every time. I saw that photo. It's a great one. It's epic.
What was the mood there at the White House? I'm sure revelatory. The big, beautiful bill passed. I must confess, I did not think, and said so on this show, I did not think after it left the Senate that it was going to get done at the House, that Mike Johnson would get those signatures and on the desk by the 4th of July as the president wanted, and he did. I mean, Thune, I guess, deserves some credit certainly over there in the Senate, but does Mike Johnson continue to prove he's some kind of miracle worker?
I mean, what a great performance by both Leader Thune and Speaker Johnson. The White House was revelatory. Right before they started the 4th of July party, the president signed the big, beautiful bill into law. So everybody there was celebrating that great American success. And I've said it before on your show, I think people have deeply underestimated both Speaker Johnson and Leader Thune. Speaker Johnson has to be one of the most legislatively successful speakers in modern history. He has been able to keep the coalition together. He has been able to keep the votes together, the government open, one big beautiful bill passing and signing into law, delivering on what the majority of the American people in the popular vote voted for, which is lower taxes, a secure border, a strong national defense, and smart investments here at home. Speaker Johnson yet again managed to keep a very diverse and very opinionated coalition together to deliver one big, beautiful bill for President Trump. I don't want to say I know how DC works, but man, I really feel like I called this week by week in real time about the ability for these two to get it done. And now the American people get to live the reality of legislation that will let them keep more of their money. It's a great opportunity for every American now.
It's an interesting thing. There weren't many. There were a couple here and there. Mike Fitzpatrick, a Republican in the backyard of Philadelphia, one that I know well. He's kind of been known as a squish, a moderate, certainly on Ukraine over the years. He's been a bit of an issue. But there's a guy called Don Bacon, interestingly, in the kind of Omaha, Nebraska area. We've got some audience in Nebraska. And this guy says he's done. He's hanging it up. He did vote to pass the big, beautiful bill, but he says he's out. Now, he won by a whisker in that district, and now he says he's out and he may want to run for president. And he's talking like, he thinks Trump's not really the guy. Like, he's kind of considered more the centrist. That dovetails with the Elon talk, Erin. And so here's where I'm driving. I don't know that I've seen a president that has more mojo than Donald Trump right now. Does the GOP, does the base have an appetite to hear these people talking about third parties?
No, they don't. And that's the one thing that Elon needs to remember. If he's doing anything that's going to divide Republicans and conservatives, that means he's making Democrats more powerful. The option isn't we need someone more conservative or more Republican. What Elon's forcing is the decision between trying to fracture the Republican Party and giving Democrats more power. Don Bacon's seat is an incredibly competitive seat. That sits in that Omaha district there. And anybody who's ever done presidential politics in Iowa knows that you end up having to buy TV ads into Omaha, Nebraska to be able to, one, try and carry the rest of the Iowa media market, but also because of the way that votes are allocated in Nebraska, you want to try and win that seat in a presidential. So getting it to a Republican, it's critical. That is a very swingy purple flip seat that can go either way, but it plays major implications and gets a lot of outside money into that district because of its adjacentness to Iowa. But Elon and anybody who's looking to fracture the Republican Party is missing the point here. We need to make sure we are united as a party, because midterms historically will favor the Democrats. Anything that divides our party doesn't help our party. Elon right now is acting a little bit more like David Hogg than he is like a leader to make sure that we can keep our party going forward for Republicans, because we have the policy platform that delivers for the American people.
Two things I would love personally, and you can tell me where I'm wrong. You literally do this for a living, and I'm just a bloviating talk show host. I would love now for the Republicans to heel turn and go foot on the gas pedal rescission talk. Cut. I think that's how they need to close this year, is now just slash and burn and hack and cut. Agree or disagree?
I think that that's really critical. I think it's also going to be important that the House do the 12 appropriations bills to be able to get federal spending under control. There are multiple avenues for us to be able to continue what Donald Trump has started, to make government more accountable, to get rid of the bureaucracy and the bloat. If we can deliver a strong economy coming out of one big, beautiful bill and couple that with bringing down the debt, the deficit, and the size of federal government, showing that we can streamline and be more effective as a nation, that is a winning message for Republicans. Because look at the Democrat chaos. Zoran Mondami, David Hogg, Hakeem Jeffries, Gavin Newsom, they have a bench of failure and political theater while Republicans are delivering. This is going to be a great contrast going into the midterms.
Do you think there will be meaningful rescission talk? I mean, do you think that that is a strategy now? Do you think? Because here's the other thing. When you talk about messaging, and this is something I kind of complained a little bit about this morning, a gentle criticism of some. I think the Democrats got away with talks of Medicaid cuts when really what should have been very well characterized early, and I don't think was, we have millions of able-bodied people collecting tax money that should be working. And that's not excusable, and Americans don't defend that. And for some reason, that got characterized as we're slashing funding for elderly people in rural hospitals. And I don't know how that got away from Republicans, but it seemed to a little bit. Agree or disagree on that?
Totally agree. But that's where the left-leaning legacy media plays the press secretary role for Democrats. They are the ones that continue to try and perpetrate those lies about what this bill ultimately does. And it's true. Gosh forbid we put accountability on tax dollars in this country without having the left get all verklempt and send their media allies after Republicans saying we're going to push Granny off a cliff like this is 2012 again. So we need to remember that ultimately the conversation needs to be had at the doors, in these town halls, with voters where they are, to say, no, you and I both agree. Common sense wins the day. If you can work, you should work. And if you're getting taxpayer dollars, let's make sure there's accountability for it. That's not slashing and burning. That's preserving the system for those who need it. But that is the battle that Republicans always face. The media will carry the water for Democrats. The easiest job in politics is to be a Democrat press secretary. Hand your press release to a member of the media and they will read it verbatim as law for you as news. So this is where the Republicans do their best and have to fight back.
We know famously Paul Ryan, who, I think in hindsight, most of us don't have a lot of love for, but we do know that when he became speaker for that brief window, his whole campaign was one of reining in, fiscal spending or, spending, trying to get things under control, like Medicaid and all that sort of thing. And they ran ads against him pushing grandma off the cliff, and it worked, and it silenced him. I guess my point is, are Republicans just reluctant to touch it because they always get framed as cruel and cutting grandma off from, her needed help and feeding the children and all of that stuff? They can't overcome that? Are we ever going to have a real meaningful talk about getting government spending under control? That's clearly what Elon's concerned about. I think most of us are.
Yeah, getting government spending under control is a unifying thing across all parties, I would assume, because you don't want to waste taxpayer dollars. But it's true. The media will always paint Republicans as those who are trying to kill grandma, trying to make sure that that poor children aren't getting food, that we're taking rural hospitals. Rural hospitals saw some of their largest closures because of Obamacare. because of the Affordable Care Act, not because Republicans were trying to rein in. The problem is Medicaid, Medicare, and Social Security, those are the third rail of politics. If you try to talk about touching them, you automatically get slapped back, not only by the media, but by voters. So it has to be a robust conversation, which is harder to do because generally if you're explaining, you're losing. So this is one of those robust conversations that if people want to lead on it and start giving the facts, they need to do it now because we have reformed and rescued Medicaid. That's how they need to frame it and not let the media drive the narrative that we are pushing everybody off the cliff and destroying it. And this is where pushback needs to happen with any Republican on camera because they need to be able to correct the media in real time. I think Congressman Burchett does one of the best jobs of that. Every time he goes on CNN, he slaps them right across the face with reality. That's what Republicans need to do everywhere, especially about the big, beautiful bill.
I've got about 15 seconds. Pam Bondi, bottom line. Is Pam Bondi a handicap, a problem, a trouble for President Trump with the Epstein stuff that came out this weekend? It's got people mad. What do you say?
I do think that that's a tough one, although she is doing a great job prosecuting a lot of criminals, gangs, the transnational gangs that have been ripping up the United States and killing our communities with fentanyl. She's doing a very good job. There's always room to make sure we're always delivering better, especially at the Department of Justice for the American people.
Thanks, Erin. All right, some other news. Over the weekend, Vaccine Advisory Board has voted to remove mercury-based compounds from the flu shot. Do you take a flu shot, Fast Eddie? I don't take a flu shot.
I
People
don't
that say,
either.
Get your flu shot.
Nope.
You don't?
I do not.
Do you know anybody that does?
Actually, no, not that I can think of, to be perfectly honest.
Really? So
Yeah.
even your parents, nobody in your family gets that annual flu shot, like
That
a religion?
That I'm aware of, no. Mm-mm.
I don't either. Never been a fan. In a win for the Make America Healthy Again movement, the Advisory Committee on Immunization Practices voted 5-1 to limit flu shots to only those free of thimerosal. And by the way, they call it a flu vaccine. And here again, I'm troubled by the use of the word vaccine. Is it a flu vaccine, Fast Eddie? Do you know people? Because here's what I know about people that get flu shots. It's almost axiomatic. Every time somebody says, I'm going to go get my flu shot, they end up in a few days getting sick with the flu. You know what I'm talking about?
Absolutely. It's not a vaccine. It's a new strain every single year. Unless you're curing for the flu forever and always, it's not a vaccine. You're correct.
Which is what COVID is. COVID is a virus like the flu, and it evolves, and it changes, and it mutates, and it's why we still get stories that say, there's a new strain of COVID. And, oh, COVID, it really was. And I don't remember, who was it? Somebody said years ago, okay, so this is just the flu. And people said, what are you, that is outrageous. You can't call COVID the flu. And somebody said, well, that's what the flu does. It mutates, and every year it's a new strain, and you say go out and get a shot to prevent it, and all people do is catch it anyway, and then it changes again. It's your best guess. Pharmaceutical companies are just making their best guess at what the strain is when they inject it into you. It may not even be the one that evolves and mutates into a new one. So why stick yourself with a thing that ultimately is just going to mutate anyway? I don't know, folks. I'm not anti-vax across the board. I'm not. I don't want to talk about it. I just think if you're telling me it's a vaccine when in fact it's not, it's a shot, and it's your best guess, like throwing a dart at a dartboard as to maybe whether or not it will ward something off, I'm going to roll the dice. I'm going to roll with my immune system. Unless if I'm immunocompromised, if I'm elderly, different conversation. But if all things are equal and I'm a healthy guy, you tell me, have you gotten your flu shot? And I say, can you promise me I won't get the flu? Well, no, I can't, but you need to get your flu shot. Why? Same with COVID. Why? Again, assuming all things are equal and everybody's healthy. And that it had mercury in it, for heaven's sakes, on top of it. Anyway, this MAHA advisory board over there voted 5-1 to limit flu shots to only those free of thimerosal, the mercury-containing preservative largely phased out of childhood shots in 2001, still lingers in some multi-dose flu shots. But with 96% of U.S. flu shots for the 24-25 season already thimerosal-free, single-dose options are not hard to come by. The committee, freshly revamped by Health and Human Services Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr., also voted 5-1 to mandate thimerosal-free flu shots for kids 18 and under in pregnant women. Good. In North Carolina, recognition of only two sexes as defined in proposed North Carolina legislation, and 3 diversity policy bills have fallen to the veto of first-term Democrat Governor Josh Stein. The quartet of rejections Thursday heading into the weekend came alongside 8 bills signed into law. Among those was the Parents Protection Act. Efforts to overturn all or some of the vetoes will come, said leaders of the Republican Majority General Assembly. Boy, that'll be sexy. Keep a sharp eye on the Republican Assembly in North Carolina. Can they override the vetoes of this governor? The U.S. Supreme Court has already sided with Tennessee in banning gender-affirming care for minors, which is butchery. It is not affirming care. It's gender-denying butchery. And Thursday said it would take the step, it would take up to 2 challenges from West Virginia and Idaho related to women's sports. So this continues to be a battle at the state level, and why your state elections and your state legislator are so important. And if you don't know who your state representative is, if you don't know who your state senator is, get to know him or her. And if they have a challenge, maybe get to know that person, or him or her. And where do they stand on this if your state is still allowing this barbarism, this butchery to happen in your state? Where do people stand on this? Are you protecting children? It's a big question. All right, have a great day. Follow along at the Harump Society and on social media, ChrisStigall.com, and we'll see you tomorrow. So that's a wrap for another Chris Stigall Show podcast. Thanks for committing to it, listening to it all the way through. You're a fighter. I like that about you. Hope you'll leave it a 5-star review and a written review. Apple Podcasts, Spotify. We'll see you next time here on the Chris Stigall Show podcast.
The Chris Stigall Show podcast.